From his days as an amateur and army champ in Iran, to becoming a guard for the Shah of Iran, to fleeing to the U.S. to achieve the American dream, and also the wrath of the Iranian government, and being able to become the assistant coach to the U.S. Olympic team, working for Vern Gagne, becoming the Iron Sheik, one of the most hated heels in professional wrestling, to turning down Vern Gagne's offer of $100,000 to break Hulk Hogan's leg and take the title back to the AWA, and so many mountains and valleys. Iran, #1, USA, bah, hooey. And man, Sheik could do all that and so much more, and he could rile up the crowds to the point that they wanted to kill him. And he was able to do all that because he knew there wasn't a goddamn soul that could take him in a shoot. I'm Charles Renton with my review WWE on A&E Biography, WWE Legends on the Iron Sheik. This is pretty well done. They glossed over a few things, but as far as the timeline, I thought they did pretty good here. This apparently is the end of WWE on A&E Biography Season 3. Who knows what they're going to do for Season 4? Hopefully, whatever they do for Season 4, sometime next year, maybe they do more 2-hour editions and not the hour-long editions, and they pick people. Even if you got to tell the bad side at the end, do one on Sherry Martel. Do some really good one. Do one on Jimmy Hart. You're telling me Jimmy Hart wouldn't be worth a 2-hour edition? I'd love to see that. So anyway, what are some people you want to see covered on Season 4 of WWE on A&E Biography? Let me know in the comments, please. And let me know what you thought of this. So video clips, how he loved to be hated. He was a great heel, but he didn't start out as a heel. He paid the price away from his family, the drug issues, all that. The old WWF Championship, the green and gold belt. So goddamn weird. So, looks so weird looking back on it. It looked classic, but just was such a strange time. And then, good talking heads here. Keith E. Greenberg, good wrestling historian here. He talked about the parents moving to Tehran, Iran, and opened up a wrestling school that Vaziri, that's about the best I'm going to try to pronounce his name. That's his last name, by the way, just as the Iron Sheik's last name. He was always just, you could just tell just from looking at him. I mean, he had hair back in his earlier days, and even in his early wrestling career. But just amateur and army champ, so revered. Became the guard for the Shah of Iran. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, I do apologize. Takhti, I believe that's how it's said. I wanted to say Tahiti or Takiti, but that's not right. He was a great champion, but he spoke out about the Iranian government, and let's just say things didn't end well for that, because the Iranian government apparently frowns upon being spoken out against. And Vaziri realizing, shit, I better get out of here. Better get the hell out of here. I think his parents were killed in a conflict over there. I think that was part of the reason he left too. I could be wrong about that, but that would be probably a good reason to leave. And he knew the name Alan Rice, who, an Olympic wrestler, had seen Vaziri and realized that he would be great over here in the U.S. How Vaziri became an Olympic, or an assistant coach for the Olympic wrestling team, I believe in 72 and 76. And, Vaziri having hair, it's just goddamn mind-blowing. Really, really mind-blowing. He was seen as a U.S. hero. He had, he had his last name on the back of a jacket that he had. He, had the Olympic rings. Greg Gagne didn't really get much of a chance. Greg Gagne only got a little bit here, which I'm a little bit surprised they didn't talk to Greg a little bit. Maybe they did, and they just didn't want to use it, because Greg, at this point, I don't think Greg knows a lot of what happened in the AWA, because Greg is known to stretch the truth a little bit. Okay, a lot. Not that he's the only person in wrestling, but seriously. Anyway, sure, Hulk Hogan was going to come back to the WWE, or to the AWA in 1991, when they'd ceased fucking operations. Of course they were, Greg. Of course they... No, he fucking wasn't. But anyway, Vern's seen a lot of potential in Vaziri. The hard training, we get to see some AWA training footage in that barn where the cold ring. Vern Gagne, you got to learn how to fall. If you don't learn how to fall, you'll get hurt. If you're hurt, you can't work, and if you work, you don't eat. Simple as that. And some other good talking heads here, jumping Jim Brunzell, who worked in the AWA and was familiar with Vaziri. Hogan talking about the tough training that Verne Gagne put people through. I mean, Hogan did have his ankle broken by Hiro Matsuda, but let's not act like Hogan, after working the territories in the South and having a stint in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation at the time, wasn't kind of immediately featured in the AWA. I mean, yeah, TV's only part of it, but from the summer of 81, they brought him in as a heel, and I think it was a feud with Crusher Blackwell. I think by the late fall, early winter of 81, he was an automatic babyface. Because it was impossible to really boo Hogan, at least at that point. Hogan talking about all that, though. Jim Brunzell knowing more about it. Greg Gagne talking about the training. Verne did train a lot of really great people that went on to do great things in professional wrestling. He was a hard-headed promoter. That hard-headedness, easy for me to say, or hard-headed nature, is what ultimately ended up costing him his promotion. Because look at the AWA after Wrestle Rock 1986. Now, that was a pretty good house, but look at it after that. Take a look at what Super Clash 85 did, and then look at Super Clash 87, which I think Super Clash 87 was in the Cow Palace. The Cow Palace holds significantly more than the audience that showed up for Super Clash 87. I think it was around 3,000, maybe 4,000 at the most. And the Cow Palace holds a lot more than that. But anyway, Vaziri, later become the Sheik, came out, started on the ring crew, drove around a lot, would put the ring together. He said they needed me to put the ring together, take it down. I'd do that. If you referee, wrestle, didn't matter. I was going to learn. And then Carol, his wife, talks about how they had an instant connection and everything. Carol was a great talking head here, too. It was nice to hear from her. Got to hear from the daughters a little bit, too. Well, the two remaining daughters. More on that later. It was nice to hear from her, though. Carol seems pretty down to earth. And that, Vaziri was happy being a face, but then felt it was getting stale. And then I guess one time he was having dinner with Verne and Verne's wife. And Verne's wife said, you know what would be a good name for you? The Iron Sheik. Because of the conflict with U.S. hostages in Iran. Iran so far away. I'm sorry. It's a flock of seagulls just flying over my head, making me say that. That was in 79. Was it 79 into 80, or am I thinking of another conflict? The whole point is it was a big goddamn deal. Timelines get muddled up in my head. He left the AWA. He wrestled in other promotions, too. They kind of mixed up some of the Georgia footage. And a lot of that also was during the Black Saturday run, where Vince McMahon bought the time slot right from under Jim Crockett Promotions. But he went to the WWF. This is where Vince and Linda had established Titan Sports. And Vince was getting a little bit more influence, but his dad still controlled the thing because, Iron Sheik, hugely over. Obviously. He would be because, one, he looked great, he was legit, and could piss people off and say, you try to take me, go ahead. Not Joe Don Baker, go head on, and not sweating palm, all that Colonel oil. Anybody who gets that reference, well, it's your move. So anyway, the U.S. capture, U.S. hostages in Iran helped elevate the fact that people were going to hate the Sheik. People were going to hate him anyway because of the whole tension and the foreign menace and the Persian club workout where he's taking the heavy clubs and he's doing this. And it was really sad to see him do that in the later 80s. And I believe he tried to do that at Heroes of Wrestling, I think, with version, and he couldn't really do it anymore because, one, those are heavy clubs. Two, Sheik was not exactly in the best place. They skipped over Heroes of Wrestling, which I'm kind of glad they did, because that was a rough time. It was him, I believe it was him and Nikolai Volkov against the Bushwhackers, the Sheep Herders, in 1999. That was rough. Seeing all those guys on any wrestling card at that point was rough. Rest in peace, Bushwhacker Butch, but still. Nevertheless, crowd booed heavily. Crowds were just ready to kill him. Slaughter, Duggan. I'm so happy that Hacksaw Jim Duggan beat cancer. I'm so happy he's still here. It's really good. Fuck cancer. They weigh in, and obviously Slaughter would know a lot about that, Duggan as well. The camel clutch, it got over because Sheik, A, had the washboard abs, had the strength, and could just pull back, and because of the mustache, and because of just the look and the fact that it was made to where nobody could get out of it. When people don't break out a finish or a submission, or they don't kick out of something that's a deadly maneuver for weeks, months on end, just in any footage. Hey, a finisher will mean something when people don't sell it. God, if only that happened now. Damn flippy shit kids. Anyway, Lawler, I did not know that Lawler drew the Ayatollah picture for Sheik's flag. Probably should have known that, but I didn't. But Lawler's a talented artist. And then Sheik got more heat from that. All the footage, it was just so good to see all this old footage. Just him laying out enhancement talent, or jobbers, and beating up people, and just having the pointed boots, the pointed boots. So it's like he's loading the boots, boom, 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 doing all that. It's so good. And Sheik loved it. And he was earning good money, really good money. Because Vince was going to pay people a fortune, basically, to get them from another promotion. Vince went with his national expansion, paying TV studios to carry his show instead of others. They didn't dive too deep into a lot of that, but none of the deals that he reneged on. Mike LaBelle in LA, I believe, Stu Hart and Stampede, and a whole bunch of that. Scooping up or poaching the talents from the other promotions. I mean, to be fair, I don't blame Vince, and it helped sustain his business for quite a while. In fact, pretty much until about 1992, he was stocked with a lot of people like that. They had come and gone, but nevertheless, once the steroid trial and other stuff kicked in, those talents dried up and went away, then he had to supply himself with others. But him beating Backlund was a big deal. Backlund had the 2,100 how many ever days. It was actually broken up because of Antonio Inoki weighing it for 7 days. But they just ignore that. It's over there in the land of the rising sun that we don't care about. According to WWE. They just, no, we don't care about that. Inoki won it. And he keep his big chin over there. Vince would say that. So anyway, Hogan describes Backlund as 5 years of plain milk white toast. That Backlund was very good, but he didn't have a lot of personality. Yes, Backlund maybe wasn't an over-the-top personality and got the heel persona later. Mr. Backlund was great, but Hogan can be insufferable on these things. Yes, Hogan needed to be the big guy to be champion. That makes sense. December 26, 1983, Arnold Scullin throws in the towel. Sheik beats Backlund. And Sheik, they're talking about, Sheik had this tremendous run, all this stuff and everything, and he was so hated, and he was. He didn't even hold it for a month, guys. I'm not knocking Sheik. I like Sheik. But he only held it for a month. That's according to the TV. Actually, he didn't even hold it a month. It was like 28 days, according to the TV. Good Lord. But anyway, and then one guy, Anthony something or other, didn't quite catch the guy's last name. The death, people talking about the death threats. He mentioned, walking into stadiums of 70,000 people wanting to kill him, but he wasn't the champion for that long. He was in the title mix after he lost it to Hogan. Hogan making the jump. It was a good thing that Sheik did not take the $100,000 offer from Vern Gagne. Vern might have wanted to take that $100,000 and invest it in a few other talents and everything and shore up his roster because, he was really, really losing things badly because a bunch of people jumped. Sure, people could say that they should have given Vern Gagne the proper notice. Vern also should have put the title on Hogan and acquiesced to some of his demands, or at least been willing to work with some stuff and not sell a bunch of his merch and keep the merch money and screw that stuff up and want to take his Japanese money. And it was really bad. I mean, I'm not the biggest Hogan defender, especially now, but Vern didn't want to play ball and it cost him. I mean, really, it cost him big. So, I'm not saying the AWA wouldn't have burned out, even with Hogan. I don't know if Hogan would have had a much bigger year than 1984, even if he had been champion, even if he had won a Super Sunday. He could have won a Super Sunday. He could have lost it back in November of 83 and left. And guess what? Would it have meant much of anything? Bockwinkel could have beaten him. Fans are already getting tired of all that shit anyway. I mean, look how much... Go watch Super Sunday 1983. AWA Super Sunday 1983. You go watch when Hogan... They think Hogan won the goddamn thing, but then they did the over-the-top rope deal. Go see how much trash was being thrown in the ring. The fans were fed up with that shit. So anyway, I mean, I hate to harp on about that. Hogan won the title. Still in the mix with Sheik. And then Slaughter turns face. And... him, does the General Patton-like promos he's described. And him and Sheik work together and have a great feud. And it was Sheik and Slaughter. It was Piper and Snuka. And Hogan was just basically the touring champion at that point. I mean, he would work with people. He would work with the Sheik on occasion. He would work with others. But he had no feud really until Piper came along to feud with him. And even then, Piper first feuded with Snuka, the coconut incident and all that. Now, we talk about the boot camp match. Oh, mother of blood! Sorry, Norman Bates. They do that. They didn't show a ton of blood, but it was kind of cool. And then the touring schedule got tough. He wanted to be around his family, and he would be a great family man when he was there, but then there would be issues. Drug issues would start to take hold a little bit later on. I did like how Freddie Blassie is Ayatollah Blassie. Got some love here. He got love in a lot of clips before this and during this run. He was a big part of their Mania 1 title win, tag title win. I just love the old footage, just him teaming with Volkov, and just, they were made for each other. They were made for each other, two over-the-top characters. Jimmy Hart looks exactly the same as he did in Memphis in 1980-81. And he's approaching 80 at this point. They talk about Mania 1 being U.S. Express. Barry Windham and Mike Rotunda win the tag titles. And that was pretty much the height of Sheik's run, because we skip to Mania 3. It's Volkov and Sheik against Killer Bees. Duggan runs in. Duggan, who had just come from Mid-South just a bit before, because by that point, I think it was the Universal Wrestling Federation actually in 86, so he jumped from the UWF, not the Herb Abrams version, thankfully, because let's hear it for paying the talents properly. Duggan comes in and puts his big wood all over Sheik's back. That's the one thing about Duggan. When he put his wood all over your back, you felt it. Just going to let that marinate right there. Keep thinking about it. Keep thinking about that splintering big wood all over your back. So, moving on from that, they kick off their feud. And the drug culture, cocaine, that kind of stuff, Sheik indulged. Duggan says, I can't throw any stones because I did. I'm just really glad he beat cancer because twice. Goddamn twice. Fucking twice. And Sheik tested positive. Positive! Sheik always positive. No, Sheik, that's bad. Poor Sheik. And then Duggan and Sheik, this was a couple months after Mania 3. Shortly after Ricky Steamboat lost the Intercontinental Championship to Honky Tonk Man, Butch Reed didn't show up, and we might have had Butch Reed as champion for a little bit instead of Honky Tonk Man, that terrible, terrible wrestler. Who was a gimmick. He was definitely a gimmick, and that's it. I stand by the fact that Honky Tonk Man should not be the all-time Intercontinental Champion. Hopefully, as of this recording, Gunther beats him. Back to the 1980s, specifically 87. It broke kayfabe. It ripped the curtain back. Nah. Vince McMahon already was saying that it was a show anyway. I mean, even though they were trying to take it seriously. Duggan did get fired briefly, got brought back. He was in a lower card position, but he was then getting a push and feuding with Harley Race by Survivor Series 87. So within a span of 6 months, it was fixed. And Sheik was sent to rehab. He was having his issues. I do find it funny, though, that they gloss over the fact Starrcade, 1987, there's no reason the Survivor Series 87 was created not to fuck with Starrcade 87. No, Vince McMahon would never fuck with this competition and do anything like that. Why would you say that? Why would you do that? My nose isn't growing. Ooh. So anyway, Sheik goes to rehab. The WCW run is kind of glossed over. Probably good, though they should have mentioned the fact that George Scott hired him, thinking that, one, George Scott had Alzheimer's, and he hired Iron Sheik thinking, I'm going to get the same guy. No, you're getting 1989 Iron Sheik instead of 1979 Iron Sheik. You could have even had 1984 Iron Sheik, but by this point, Sheik wasn't as mobile. He wasn't able to do that, but I do remember him working a match with Sting, and I remember even as 8 years old thinking, this isn't very good. But they paid him $100,000, sent him home, and then they forgot to send him his notice. This was said on Jim Cornette's podcast. Jim Cornette was there in WCW at the time. And it rolled over, so they paid him another $100,000. They brought him back thinking they could just have him, lose all the time and he'll leave. Nope. He kept getting paid. And those are so bad they sent him home. And he got paid $200,000 to work 6 months worth, maybe. I don't even know if it was that much. It might have been 4. And now there are wrestlers that work for the big companies that get paid probably about $500,000 each year and barely get used. Smart. That's what happens when stupid people have money in a wrestling company. So, he wasn't in the best shape by 89. Vince would bring Sheik back on occasion. Did bring him back. When they had Slaughter turn heel, and he went from G.I. Joe to G.I. Joe. Oh, got him in so much trouble. So much trouble. I'm sorry. Just couldn't help it. Anyway, he was paired with General Adnan, Sheik Adnan El Casey, who was in the AWA. Or that's what he was in the AWA. And Sheik was Colonel Mustafa. Sheik had really gained weight by this point. It was really sad to see. They mentioned the SummerSlam 91 match. They skipped pretty much over Mania 7. Well, they showed a little bit of it. And then, SummerSlam 91, it was going to be Hogan and Warrior against the Triangle of Terror with Sid Justice as a special guest referee. I haven't said this in a while. Fuck the Ultimate Warrior. I'm glad he's dead. So, 1996-97 return, where Rikishi was the Sultan. He was no longer Fatu. He was no longer making a difference. He was the Sultan. That gimmick didn't get over. At all. And, they showed Rocky Maivia and Rocky Johnson laying out Iron Sheik. Were there any young girls in the audience for Rocky Johnson? Look it up, kids. There's a good reason why Rock didn't really have the best relationship with his dad. Seriously, read up on Rocky Johnson. There's a reason why his book was pulled. Autobiography by, I don't remember who did, even though I'm sure they're great writers, but there's a reason why that was pulled, because it didn't share a lot of the stuff that he actually did. Oh, Rocky Johnson's burning in hell. Let's get back to this. The cocaine usage, crack cocaine, all that. The Mania 17 return. I think Sheik had been in a car accident. I think that's why he couldn't really move. They glossed over that. He won the thing because he couldn't go over the top rope. They could sort of put him over the top rope, but then they would have to send him to the floor. But it took him forever to get to the ring. By the time the Iron Sheik gets to WrestleMania, or gets to the ring, it'll be time for WrestleMania 38. I miss Bobby Heenan. I miss Bobby Heenan so much. And Mean Gene. God, so many greats. So many greats. At least they outlived the Ultimate Warrior. Fuck the Ultimate Warrior. So anyway, then he did win the Battle Royal, the gimmick Battle Royal. The stuff about his daughter Marissa dating a guy that was not good for her. She tried to break it off. He killed her. And then went and confessed his sins to, a priest or a pastor or whatever. That's why religion is bullshit, by the way. You can't absolve somebody of murder. That is not how those buildings that don't pay any goddamn tax, not how that fucking works. That's not how the good books work. You murder somebody, it's a fucking crime. And I hope that guy died horribly in jail. I don't know if he's still alive. And Sheik was torn up. Was going to actually cut the guy's head, slit his throat and cut his head off. in the courtroom, which would have been a hell of a visual. But then he realized, hey, wait a second, he got talked out of it because he would have deprived his daughters of his other two daughters, and also it wouldn't have brought his daughter back. And he was in the Hall of Fame in 2005. Speech that stole the goddamn show. Kept doing drugs, kept drinking. His wife left him briefly. That woke him up, and now he's fine. He's clean. They had mentioned the Sheik movie that came out, or Sheik, I think it was called Sheik, that really showed him in not the best light, and how there's two guys running his Twitter account. Because would you expect Sheik to know how to use Twitter? It's a good thing they gave him subtitles, I'll just say that. Because, I mean, English isn't his first language, obviously. And the years of drug abuse and all that stuff, and alcohol abuse, and just had trauma and all that, ended up pretty much making it to where it was impossible to understand him. At least he got to tell a story. True American dream. I mean, hey, he managed to survive this goddamn long. That's impressive. So, agree, disagree, what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm Jonathan. I'll see you soon.